So I was talking to a buddy of mine a while ago, and he asked me why I didn't get into fantasy football. And originally, I wanted to give you guys my big board for your drafts and whatnot. And I, at the time, thought that it made no sense to make videos that could potentially be irrelevant weeks later. And then I realized I was doing daily news videos, and these videos tend to become irrelevant like a couple days later. So I think that I should at least give a few fantasy football videos a shot, because it's something that I'm really into and really invested in, and it's something that I always historically wanted advice for, but I couldn't really find any good resources on YouTube for it, except for a few YouTubers. But I think that I could add a lot of value by giving you guys some fantasy football advice. So what's going on, guys? Your boy Mike here. And before we get to the content, guys, make sure you smash that like button for the YouTube algorithm. What happens when you smash the like button is you pretty much tell YouTube that an NFL fan would enjoy my content, or a fantasy football fan would enjoy my content, and it really helps the channel grow. We also started our live simulation from 2002. I thought it was 2003, but it's actually 2002 on twitch.tv/Flight Mike on Madden 2021. If you guys want to come by, I'm going to be streaming literally after this. I'm trying to take the day off and just chill with you guys. I'm going to be going all the way until the Texans play the Chiefs, or until the Laker game starts, and a link to that's in the description down below. I'd love to see you there. Now that we got all that out of the way, break! Mic check 1 2 1 2. So I figured the best type of video to start out with before I give you guys waiver claims that you can make after week 1 would be start 'em and sit 'em. And pretty much what the concept is I'm going to go through a bunch of players and their matchups this week and tell you who has very favorable matchups and who has absolutely atrocious matchups, who you want to consider starting and who you may want to consider leaving on your bench for this week. Now, we're going to start with players that I think you need to definitively start no matter what. And obviously there are exceptions to this rule. Like if you have Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, I expect you to start them each and every single week. But players like, say, Ben Roethlisberger, who's going up against the New York Giants, he might be a little shaky considering the fact that he just came off of an injury. But nevertheless, he has a great matchup this week. The Giants defense isn't really known to be that remarkable of a defense, and they don't really have that many great players save for James Bradbury at the corner position. They also recently cut their former first-round pick DeAndre Baker, so you should definitely start Ben Roethlisberger if he's your quarterback this week. Up next, we have Jimmy Garoppolo going up against the Arizona Cardinals, and don't get it twisted, I think the Arizona Cardinals are one of the most exciting young teams this year, and they do have some studs on the defensive side of the ball, like Patrick Peterson. They drafted Isaiah Simmons. They have Chandler Jones. They just signed Budda Baker to a huge contract. Nevertheless, this is still a young and unproven defense, and I'm not going to lose any sleep with starting Jimmy Garoppolo against the Arizona Cardinals. And speaking about the Arizona Cardinals, you might be thinking, okay, well, I have Kyler Murray, Mike, and they're going up against the best defense in the entire NFL, or the most valuable fantasy football defense in the entire NFL. Should I sit Kyler Murray? Typically, I'd say yes, but there's just way too much excitement this year with Kyler Murray. Am I not right? For all you know, Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray could come and show the San Francisco 49ers something that they never expected before. Considering the fact that they have DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Kirk, and Larry Fitzgerald in the wide receiver core, they have Kenyon Drake as well as a halfback, and they actually invested some capital in Kyler Murray's offensive line, I wouldn't feel too bad starting Kyler Murray this week, just so you could get an idea of how good he's going to be. I think there's a 50-50 chance between how well he performs this week against the San Francisco 49ers. Now, finally, we can't forget Cam Newton. This is probably the biggest wild card quarterback that you could have, because you don't know how he's going to perform. He has his best wide receiver is Julian Edelman, and then a second-year first-round pick named N'Keal Harry. He doesn't have Rob Gronkowski anymore. He has a army of running backs, and we don't know who's going to emerge as his best one, but he's going up against the Miami Dolphins, who without a doubt are going to look way different on the defensive side of the ball. They recently signed Byron Jones to a huge contract, and they also have Xavier Howard, who is already a stud player. They have a very defensive-minded head coach in Brian Flores, and historically when Bill Belichick goes up against one of his former coaches, he doesn't do so well. Nevertheless, it's kind of the same story as Kyler Murray. Yes, he's not going up against a defense that's as good as the San Francisco 49ers, but Cam Newton versus the Miami Dolphins, I think there's worse plays you can make. I would start him. Now, here are players that are definite sits at the quarterback position. Sam Darnold's going up against the Buffalo Bills, man, and I didn't really have that much faith in Adam Gase. I hope Sam Darnold could take the next step because he looks more and more promising each and every year, but not against one of the best defenses in the league. Sit Sam Darnold against the Buffalo Bills. Same goes with Matthew Stafford versus the Chicago Bears. They have a scary defense, and I understand that Matthew Stafford did really, really well before he went down with an injury last year, but they have a crazy pass rush featuring Robert Quinn, and they have Eddie Jackson as well. They have Khalil Mack also. You don't want to bank on Matthew Stafford returning from an injury against a top-tier defense like that. On top of that, same goes with Daniel Jones going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers had one of the best defenses last year, featuring players like Cam Hayward and Minkah Fitzpatrick. They also got TJ Watt back over there, and last year they allowed 12.84 points per game against opposing quarterbacks, and Daniel Jones has been very shaky in the past, so I would recommend sitting Daniel Jones versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. Baker Mayfield is going up against the Baltimore Ravens. I would recommend not starting Baker Mayfield. I do think he could be good this year. He has a very promising head coach this year. But again, Baltimore's defense is a remarkable defense, and I don't count on Baker Mayfield getting back on his rookie year pace against a good defense. Finally, we have Kirk Cousins going up against the Green Bay Packers, and the Vikings are notorious for being more of a running team than a passing team, but on top of that, last year, the Packers absolutely dominated Kirk Cousins, and I don't think that the Vikings got that much better on the offensive side of the ball, and the Packers defense for the most part looks the same, so let's just sit Kirk Cousins for this week. So up next, we of course have running backs, and we're going to start with Melvin Gordon versus the Tennessee Titans. Yes, I understand that Melvin Gordon might be in a timeshare this year, but look, man, you know what you were getting when you drafted him. You knew he was sharing a backfield with Phillip Lindsay, so if there is a game for Melvin Gordon to really break out, it would be against a team that allowed almost 1 point per touch last year and nearly 27 fantasy points per game to opposing running backs last season. Of course, they recently signed Jadeveon Clowney, so the Titans might be a tougher matchup, but hell, I'm starting Melvin Gordon if I have him. Up next, we have Raheem Mostert versus the Cardinals, and honestly, I personally avoided all 49er running backs because I don't like Kyle Shanahan's running backs. He always does a timeshare, and it always seems to screw me over in the past, but if you have Raheem Mostert, he would probably be doing at least flex numbers this week against the Arizona Cardinals. If you have Tariq Cohen, this is the perfect time to go ahead and start him because the Bears could be without David Montgomery and they're going up against the Detroit Lions. So I would definitely recommend starting him. Other players that I recommend starting would be Jonathan Taylor versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Any player that's going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars is a must start. If you need a quarterback this week and you're not very excited about your current quarterback, then definitely go ahead and pick up Phillip Rivers if he's available in your waiver wire because they're going up against the Jags. Mark Ingram's going up against the Cleveland Browns, and J.K. Dobbins is as well, but I'm still unsure about Dobbins' role in the Baltimore Ravens offense. I would definitely start Mark Ingram. I don't really think I'd start Dobbins. Cam Akers is going to make his debut versus the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football, and he's without a doubt the biggest wild card this week because 1, we don't really know his role, 2, he's going up against a defense with very capable run-stopping linebackers, and 3, his offensive line is extremely suspect. But at the same time, Sean McVay historically has been really good at game planning for running backs. We saw what he did for Todd Gurley. We even saw what he did for CJ Anderson. So with the right running back, we know that Sean McVay could do a great game plan and potentially put Akers in a position to succeed. I do have him in one of my leagues, and I'm personally benching him just so I can see what his role is, because for all you know, Sean McVay could throw Malcolm Brown and Cam Akers at you and maybe give Malcolm Brown more touches than Cam Akers. I don't want to potentially risk losing week 1 as a result of that, but you could really go either way. So he's a start or a sit, and honestly, if you have an argument for either, let me know in the comment section down below. My favorite start this week would have to be Todd Gurley versus the Seattle Seahawks, mainly because historically Todd Gurley has done really well against the Seattle Seahawks. He's always scored at least 18 plus fantasy football. He's always scored at least 18 plus fantasy points in every game he played against the Seattle Seahawks and has posted 25 or more points twice. So this is someone that he should be familiar with and someone that he could do really well up against. Highly recommend starting Todd Gurley. I would sit Devin Singletary versus the New York Jets because we don't know how that backfield's going to go yet. We don't know if it's going to be Zach Moss as the main guy or Singletary. It appears as though the Bills are leaning more Moss than Singletary, so just to be safe, I'd bench Devin Singletary this week. DeAndre Swift is going up against the Chicago Bears, so I would definitely sit him because, while the Chicago Bears are one of the top defenses in the league, Jordan Howard is going up against the Patriots. He's a timeshare running back who's sharing the backfield with Matt Breida, and also the Patriots have historically been very good at stopping the run, but they don't really have as many studs on the defensive side of the ball. This is more about the player, and Jordan Howard has really been letting me down recently. I would say Kareem Hunt going up against the Baltimore Ravens, and I think the most important player to possibly sit, because this is a guy that I personally reached on, and a lot of people made fun of me for reaching on this player. I have him in all my fantasy football leagues, and that's Leonard Fournette. And I do see Leonard Fournette eventually becoming the top running back in Tampa Bay this year. It appears as though Bruce Arians is committed to Ronald Jones for the meantime. And even if they were playing, it's the freaking Saints. You know, I don't really expect them to do really that well against the New Orleans Saints. And who knows how the Buccaneers are going to start this year. It's too risky to start either Leonard Fournette or Ronald Jones. So wide receivers are going to be a little bit more in depth. So as a result, I may have to speed through these guys. So DK Metcalf is going to be facing the Atlanta Falcons. And I personally really like DK Metcalf as the top wide receiver in Seattle this year. He's going up against the Falcons, which might put AJ Terrell on him because Desmond Trufant is now a member of the Detroit Lions. Either way, I'm not really too scared of the Atlanta Falcons DBs. DK Metcalf should have a field day over there. Up next, we have Courtland Sutton going up against the Tennessee Titans. And I honestly love the Broncos this year, and the Broncos also have tremendous weapons in Jerry Jeudy and KJ Hamler as well. If you have Jeudy, go ahead and start him as well, but I feel like Sutton's a very solid start against the Tennessee Titans team that isn't really notorious for their DBs. If you had the foresight of drafting T.Y. Hilton, then kudos to you. He has a gunslinging quarterback in Phillip Rivers, and the last time he had such a quarterback, he posted a 1,000-plus yard season with 6 touchdowns. So there's a good chance that Hilton's going to go up against C.J. Henderson out of Florida, but again, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars, man. If you're going up against them, they're tanking for Trevor Lawrence. Always start a player that's going up against the Jags. Now, on the opposing side, DJ Chark's going up against the Indianapolis Colts. Chark had a lot of targets last year from Gardner Minshew, and I expect him to replicate that this year, probably even more, to be honest. So I would go ahead and start him against the Indianapolis Colts. If you have any Pittsburgh wide receiver named Juju Smith-Schuster or Deontay Johnson, I would start them as well against the New York Giants. In terms of sitting wide receivers, I would sit Devontae Parker against the New England Patriots because he's going up against Stephon Gilmore and he has Ryan Fitzpatrick throwing him the football. I would sit Amari Cooper against the LA Rams because he's dealing with a hamstring injury and the Cowboys are loaded at wide receiver. I would sit Odell Beckham Jr. versus the Baltimore Ravens because I'm still waiting for him to prove that he's Odell Beckham Jr. again. And I would sit Julian Edelman versus the Miami Dolphins because, well, he has a brand new quarterback. We don't know how that's going to go. In terms of team defenses, I could do tight ends. I didn't want this video to get too long. Let me know if you want me to do tight ends in the future, but I would start the Bills versus the Jets, the Eagles versus the Washington football team, and the Steelers versus the Giants. I would obviously start the Patriots versus the Dolphins and the Titans versus the Broncos. If you happen to have the Rams defense and they're facing the Cowboys this week, I would sit them. The Buccaneers defense versus the Saints, I would easily sit them. The Packers defense are against the Vikings, I would also sit them. Now, also, I don't think I need to tell you this, don't start the freaking Texans versus the Chiefs. And that's going to be it for this week, man. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have additional questions about who you should start or sit, let me know in the comment section down below, and I will happily pop into the comment section and help you guys out. And I'm sure many other members of my community will pop in to help you out. I'm also live streaming on Twitch right now, so come on by, ask me any fantasy football advice you need. I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.